Hello, I'm Mike,
I'm Em.
and we're going to read a book. We're going to continue reading The Count of Monte Cristo. We've read chapters 1 through 6. Neither of us have ever read this book before, and
Never.
we're reading it for the first time. It's available on Project Gutenberg, and we're just going through it. And I don't know, anything else to say before we dive in?
Usual disclaimer about bad accents.
Yeah, we're going to keep going with the accents. We've been hearing great feedback about that. Oh, and we also heard feedback that M's a little bit quiet and compared to my sort of like boomy voice. So we've moved her microphone a little bit closer, or moved the microphone closer to her mouth. So hopefully it's easier to hear M. Let us know in the comments or in the chat and Twitch whether or not the sound levels are okay. Ba-dum. Let's do it. Chapter 7, The Examination. Do you want to start or shall I?
Well, do you want to do a very quick, brief recap of where we finished off?
What just happened? So I think it was de Villefort, the lawyer. It was the I guess the nuptial
right.
wedding dinner with de Villefort's family, and his mother-in-law was really coming down like, you better be brutal, right?
Harsh.
You're gonna be like a total a-hole
jerk.
And like someone came up and interrupted the dinner and said, hey, by the way, we found one. We found like a conspirator.
We got one.
We got one. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, and his wife, or his recent, I think they just got married that day. She was like, you better not be too hard. And his mother-in-law was like, you better be really hard. And he's like, okay.
Yeah. I think that's sort of the tightrope he's walking there.
Yeah.
So let's see what goes on in chapter 7, the examination. How about I take it?
Go for it.
And then I'll switch off after a couple of paragraphs. Here goes. No sooner had Villefort left the salon than he assumed the grave air of a man who holds the balance of life and death in his hands. Now, in spite of the nobility of his countenance, the command of which, like a finished actor, he had carefully studied before the glass. So he's like in the mirror, just like working on these faces. It was by no means easy for him to assume an air of judicial severity. Except the recollection of the line of politics his father had adopted, and which might interfere, unless he acted with the greatest prudence, with his own career, Gerald de Villefort was as happy as a man could be. Already rich, he held a high official station, though only 27. He was about to marry, so he hasn't done it yet. Okay. I think it was like an engagement party, or maybe like they're getting married that night.
Those tricky engagement parties, all right.
Right, nuptial ceremony. He was about to marry a young and charming woman, whom he loved, not passionately, but reasonably, as became a deputy attorney of the king. And besides her personal attractions, which were very great, Mademoiselle de Saint-Méran's family possessed considerable political influence, which they would, of course, exert in his favor. The dowry of his wife amounted to 50,000 crowns, and he had, besides, the prospect of seeing her fortune increased to 500,000 at her father's death. These considerations naturally gave Villefort a feeling of such complete felicity that his mind was fairly dazzled in its contemplation. So he married for love. That's what I'm reading here. Yes, he married for love.
Quite clear.
Oh, what? How sweet. How sweet. Like, do you think that it's like at the marriage ceremony, there'll be like the groom, the bride, the priest, or the officiant, and then like the mother-in-law, the father-in-law, like both families, then the accountants.
Yep.
They've got the accountants and like the bean counters who are like,
do you take this woman's money to hold forever?
You watch the transaction occur, like someone signs a check and everyone's like,
yeah.
Very good.
That's got to feel good from her point of view.
This is very old school. At the door he met the commissary of police who was waiting for him. The sight of this officer recalled Villefort from the third heaven to earth. He composed his face, as we have before described, so he's like center, and said, I have read the letter, sir, and you have acted rightly in arresting this man. Now inform me what you have discovered concerning him and the conspiracy. So this man, I guess he's just the officer at the door. I'm just going to give him a different voice. We know nothing as yet of the conspiracy, monsieur. All the papers found have been sealed up and placed on your desk. The prisoner himself is named Edmond Dantes, mate on board the 3 masters of Pharaon, trading in cotton with Alexandria and Smyrna, and belonging to Morel and Son of Marseille.
Very good.
Before he entered the merchant service, had he ever served in the Marines? Oh no, monsieur, he is very young. How old? 19 or 20 at the most. At this moment, and as Villefort had arrived at the corner of the Rue de Concert, a man who seemed to have been waiting for him approached. It was Monsieur Morel. "Ah, Monsieur de Villefort," cried he, "I am delighted to see you. Some of your people have committed the strangest mistake. They have just arrested Edmond Dantes, mate of my vessel." "I know it, monsieur," replied Villefort, "and I'm now going to examine him." "Oh," said Morel, carried away by his friendship, "you do not know him, and I do. He is the most estimable, the most trustworthy creature in the world, and I will venture to say there is not a better seaman in all the merchant service. Oh, Monsieur de Villefort, I beseech your indulgence for him." Why don't you take it from here?
Okay. Villefort, as we have seen, belonged to the aristocratic party at Marseille, Morel to the plebeian. Oh, snap. The first was a royalist, the other suspected of Bonapartism. Villefort looked disdainfully at Morel and replied coldly, "You are aware, monsieur, that a man may be estimable and trustworthy in private life, and the best seaman in the merchant service, and yet be, politically speaking, a great criminal. Is it not true?" The magistrate laid emphasis on these words, as if he wished to apply them to the owner himself, while his eyes seemed to plunge into the heart of one who, interceding for another, had himself need of indulgence. Morel reddened, for his own conscience was not quite clear on politics. Besides, what Dantes had told him of his interview with the Grand Marshal, and what the Emperor had said to him, embarrassed him. He replied, however, in a tone of deep interest, "I entreat you, Monsieur de Villefort, be, as you always are, kind and equitable, and give him back to us soon." This "give us" sounded revolutionary in the deputy's ears. My God.
Is that a revolution I hear?
Perk, perk. Ah, murmured he. "Is Dantes then a member of some carbonary society, that his protector thus employs the collective form? He was,
Is he a communist?
Is he a communist? Yeah. He was, if I recollect, arrested in a tavern, in company with a great many others." Then he added, "Monsieur, you may rest assured I shall perform my duty impartially, and that if he be innocent, you shall not have appealed to me in vain. Should he, however, be guilty, in this present epoch, impunity would furnish a dangerous example, and I must do my duty."
Look at this guy. So, de Villefort is actually not... If this is de Villefort... Sorry,
No.
This is de Villefort?
Yeah.
And this is Monsieur Morel?
I guess so.
He is not as old as I thought. I've been making Monsieur Morel, maybe I'm in my late 70s or early 80s.
No, I don't think he's as old as old Dantes.
Okay, I'm gonna just retcon and just say that, he's just a heavy smoker. And take a look at de Villefort here. Is he wearing sunglasses?
An eye patch?
Or an eye patch? Let me zoom in here. I don't know if you can see what I'm doing here. Yeah, I think you can. What's going on here?
I think...
Or he's got his eyes really big and he's got the devil inside him. I don't know.
Good question.
But
it definitely looks like there's some kind of translucency, like he's wearing glasses.
Yeah.
But I wouldn't have thought sunglasses were invented / fashionable at that time.
Excuse me, I have to do some welding. Yeah.
All right. I'll do another couple and pause.
Sure.
As he had now arrived at the door of his own house, which adjoined the Palais de Justice, as he entered, after having, God, Dumas loves his
commas
dependent
and
phrases. After having coldly saluted the ship owner, he stood as if petrified on the spot where Villefort had left him. The antechamber was full of police agents and gendarmes, in the midst of whom, carefully watched, but calm and smiling, stood the prisoner. Who does he remind me of?
Villefort?
Yeah. No, Dantes. It's like someone from Les Mis, just
supremely confident.
Super chill, I got this. Yeah.
Oh, arrested? No big deal.
No big deal.
He's like the Fonz right now. Hey, it's a mistake.
Yeah. Villefort traversed the antechamber, cast a side glance at Dantes, and taking a packet with which a gendarme offered him, disappeared, saying, "Bring in the prisoner." Rapid as had been Villefort's glance, it had served to give him an idea of the man he was about to interrogate. He had recognized intelligence in the high forehead, courage in the dark eye and bent brow, and frankness in the thick lips that showed a set of pearly teeth.
He's really like drawing a lot of inferences based on appearance. Like maybe he should look for patterns on his scalp. Like, do you mind if I just?
Yeah.
Oh, you've got like that sort of thing.
Yeah. Well, he made a similar assessment of Morel, class-wise anyway. Villefort's first impression was favorable, but he had been so often warned to mistrust first impulses that he applied the maxim to the impression, forgetting the difference between the two words. He stifled, therefore, the feelings of compassion that were rising, composed his features, and sat down, grim and somber, at his desk. An instant after, Dantes entered. He was pale but calm and collected, and saluting his judge with easy politeness, looked round for a seat, as if he had been in Monsieur Morel's salon. It was then that he encountered for the first time Villefort's look. The sunglasses. I'm sure
he's just like got those reflective, like Morpheus sunglasses.
Yeah.
I want to talk to you about prison.
That look peculiar to the magistrate, who, while seeming to read the thoughts of others, betrays nothing of his own. That's all you.
Who and what are you? Demanded Villefort, turning over a pile of papers containing information relative to the prisoner that a police agent had given to him on his entry, and that already, in an hour's time, had swelled to voluminous proportions, thanks to the corrupt espionage of which the accused is always made the victim. My name is Edmond Dantes, replied the young man calmly. I am mate of the Pharaon, belonging to Monsieur Morel and Son. Your age? Continued Villefort. 19, returned Dantes. What were you doing at the moment you were arrested? I was at the festival of my marriage, monsieur, said the young man, his voice slightly tremulous. So great was the contrast between that happy moment and the painful ceremony he was now undergoing. So great was the contrast between the somber aspect of Monsieur de Villefort and the radiant face of Mercedes. You were at the festival of your marriage? Said the deputy, shuddering in spite of himself. We couldn't have saved this for morning? Mm-hmm. Yes, monsieur. I am on the point of marrying a young girl I have been attached to for 3 years. Villefort, impassive as he was struck with this coincidence. And the tremulous voice of Dantes, surprised in the midst of his happiness, struck a sympathetic chord in his own bosom. He also was on the point of being married, and he was summoned from his own happiness to destroy that of another. This philosophic reflection, thought he, will make a great sensation at Monsieur de Saint-Méran's.
Oh my God.
And it's like, this will be good. I can use this story later. And he arranged mentally, while Dantes awaited further questions, the antithesis by which orators often create a reputation for eloquence. When this speech was arranged, Villefort turned to Dantes.
Good Lord.
I still think he's wearing sunglasses.
I think he is too. It's like spectacles.
Yeah.
Like tinted spectacles.
Tinted specs. Go on, sir, said he. What would you have me say? Give all the information in your power. Tell me on which point you desire information, and I will tell all I know. Only, added he with a smile, I warn you, I know very little. Have you served under the usurper? I was about to be mustered into the Royal Marines when he fell. It is reported your political opinions are extreme, said Villefort, who had never heard anything of the kind, but was not sorry to make this inquiry as if it were an accusation. This is like Law and Order, whenever like the police are like, someone saw you there.
Yeah.
And they're totally making it up.
It's a total bluff.
A total gambit, yeah.
He loves it so much.
He does.
He's just like his own ego. He's like, yeah.
Villefort, he's in his element. I was born for this. My political opinion, replied Dantes. Alas, sir, I never had any opinions. I am hardly 19. I know nothing. I have no part to play. If I obtain the situation I desire, I shall owe it to Monsieur Morel. Thus, all my opinions, I will not say public, but private, are confined to these 3 sentiments. I love my father, I respect Monsieur Morel, and I adore Mercedes. In that order.
I am a 2D character.
These are the elements of my character as was written in the plot points of the cause notes. This, sir, is all I can tell you, and you see how uninteresting it is. As Dantes spoke, Villefort gazed at his ingenious and open countenance.
Ingenuous.
Oh, thank you. At his ingenuous and open countenance, and recollected the words of Renee, who, without knowing who the culprit was, had besought his indulgence for him. With the deputy's knowledge of crime and criminals, every word the young man uttered convinced him, more and more, of his innocence. This lad, for he was scarcely a man, simple, natural, eloquent, with that eloquence of the heart never found eloquent with that eloquence of the heart never found when sought for, full of affection for everybody, because he was happy, and because happiness renders even the wicked good, extended his affection even to his judge, spite of Villefort's severe look and stern accent. Dantes seemed full of kindness. Why don't you take over?
Okay. Pardieu, said Villefort, he is a noble fellow. I hope I shall gain Renee's favor easily by obeying the first command she ever imposed on me. I shall have at least a pressure of the hand in public, and a sweet kiss in private.
Focus, man!
Full of this idea, Villefort's face became so joyous that when he turned to Dantes, the latter, who had watched the change on his physiognomy, was smiling also. Sir, said Villefort, have you any enemies at least that you know? I have enemies, replied Dantes. My position is not sufficiently elevated for that. As for my disposition, that is perhaps somewhat too hasty, but I have striven to repress it. I have had 10 or 12 sailors under me, and if you question them, they will tell you that they love and respect me, not as a father if I am too young, but as an elder brother. But you may have excited jealousy. You are about to become captain at 19, an elevated post. You are about to marry a pretty girl who loves you, and these two pieces of good fortune may have excited the envy of someone.
I think he's about to crack it. Come on, Villefort, put it together.
I think Dantes is going to be too nice. He's going to be like,
No, I was definitely the guilty party. Throw me away.
You are right. You know men better than I do, and what you say may possibly be the case, I confess. But if such persons are among my acquaintances, I prefer not to know it, because then I should be forced to hate them. You are wrong. You should always strive to see clearly around you. You seem a worthy young man. I will depart from the strict line of my duty to aid you in discovering the author of this accusation. Here is the paper. Do you know the writing? As he spoke, Villefort drew the letter from his pocket and presented it to Dantes. That seems... He's done a 180 here.
Yeah.
Because, well, maybe I guess he's allowed to confront his accuser, even if it's a piece of paper.
I guess.
It just feels out of the norm.
It's like... You know what this feels like? Is like someone called in a tip to Crime Stoppers.
Yes.
It's like, hey... My neighbor, or I shouldn't say my neighbor, this guy at this address,
someone I know.
Total Bonapartist, and they brought him in, and they're thinking of putting him away, or just sending him to his death,
no evidence.
On nothing. It's
Okay.
crazy. Well, I guess he's got some of his history. If there's anything there, it's like his history, but there is no case here.
Dantes read it. A cloud passed over his brow as he said, No, monsieur, I do not know the writing, and yet it is tolerably plain. Whoever did it writes well. Wouldn't it be obvious it was some writing with their non-dominant hand? It's like chicken scratch.
Maybe. Yeah. This person looks like it was written with a crayon between two toes by a child.
Yeah. I am very fortunate, added he, looking gratefully at Villefort, to be examined by such a man as you. For this envious person is a real enemy. And by the rapid glance that the young man's eyes shot forth, Villefort saw how much energy lay hid beneath this mildness. Now, said the deputy, answer me frankly, not as a prisoner to a judge, but as one man to another who takes an interest in him. What truth is there in the accusation contained in this anonymous letter? And Villefort threw disdainfully on his desk the letter Dantes had just given back to him. None at all. I will tell you the real facts. I swear by my honor as a sailor, by my love for Mercedes, by the life of my father. Speak, monsieur, said Villefort. Then, internally, if Renee could see me, I hope she would be satisfied and would no longer call me a decapitator.
I'm so cool right now. I can tell her all about it.
Why shake it?
Okay. Well, when we quitted Naples, Captain Leclerc was attacked with a brain fever. As we had no doctor on board and he was so anxious to arrive at Elba that he would not touch at any other port, his disorder rose to such a height that at the end of the third day, feeling he was dying, he called me to him. My dear Dantes, said he, swear to perform what I am going to tell you, for it is a matter of the deepest importance. I swear it, Captain, replied I. Well, as after my death, the command devolves on you as mate, assume the command and bear up for the island of Elba, disembark at Portoferraio, ask for the Grand Marshal, give him this letter. Perhaps they will give you another letter and charge you with a commission. You will accomplish what I was to have done and derive all the honor and profit from it. I will do it, Captain, but perhaps I shall not be admitted to the Grand Marshal's presence as easily as you expect. Here is a ring that will obtain audience of him and remove every difficulty, said the captain. At these words, he gave me a ring. At these words, he gave me a ring. It was time. 2 hours after he was delirious. The next day, he died. And what did you do then? What I ought to have done, and what everyone would have done in my place. Everywhere, the last requests of a dying man are sacred, but with a sailor, the last requests of his superior are commands. I sailed for the island of Elba, where I arrived the next day. I ordered everybody to remain on board, and went on shore alone. As I had expected, I found some difficulty in obtaining access to the Grand Marshal, but I sent the ring I had received from the captain to him, and was instantly admitted. He questioned me concerning Captain Leclerc's death, and, as the latter had told me, gave me a letter to carry on to a person in Paris. I undertook it, because it was what my captain had bade me do. I landed here, regulated the affairs of the vessel, and hastened to visit my affianced bride, whom I found more lovely than ever. Thanks to Monsieur Morel, all the forms were got over. In a word, I was, as I told you, at my marriage feast, and I should have been married in an hour. And tomorrow, I intended to start for Paris, had I not been arrested on this charge, which you as well as I now see to be unjust. Ah, said Villefort, this seems to me the truth. If you have been culpable, it was imprudence, and this imprudence was in obedience to the orders of your captain. Give up this letter you have brought from Elba, and pass your words. You will appear should you be required. And pass your word. You will appear should you be required, and go and rejoin your friends. I am free then, sir? Cried Dantes joyfully. Yes, but first give me this letter.
Oh no, this is gonna be the thing.
You have it already, for it was taken from me with some others which I see in that packet. Stop a moment. Oh, here's the deputy. Stop a moment, said the deputy as Dantes took his hat and gloves. To whom?
I think it's...
Is this...
I think it's Villefort. I think
it's Villefort. Is the deputy?
I think
he's the deputy justice.
I don't know. I think though.
All right, fair enough. Stop a moment, said the deputy as Dantes took his hat and gloves. To whom is it addressed? To Monsieur Noirtier, Rue Coqueron, Paris. Had a thunderbolt fallen into the room, Villefort could not have been more stupefied. So that's actually his dad. Yeah, the Count Noirtier. Yeah, Noirtier?
Noirtier, yeah.
He sank into his seat and hastily turned over the packet. Turning over the packet, drew forth the fatal letter, at which he glanced with an expression of terror. Monsieur Noirtier, Rue Coqueron, Numero 3. 11, 12, is it?
No. 11, 12,
13. Thank you. 13, murmured he, growing still paler. I thought I had it. I was like, oh, 13. 13, murmured he, growing still paler. All right, take it from here.
Yes, said Dantes. Do you know him? No, replied Villefort. A faithful servant of the king does not know conspirators.
It's your dad!
It is a conspiracy, then. It is a conspiracy, then, asked Dantes, who, after believing himself free, now began to feel a tenfold alarm. I have, however, already told you, sir, I was entirely ignorant of the contents of the letter. Yes, but you knew the name of the person to whom it was addressed, said Villefort. I was forced to read the address to know to whom to give it. Have you shown this letter to anyone? Asked Villefort, becoming still more pale. To no one, on my honor.
Oh, so this is interesting. It kind of feels Shakespearean, where like this machine has been set up of conditions, and the machine is Villefort does not want this letter to exist. He doesn't want anyone to know that it exists because it's for his dad, and like his marriage is kind of on the line, his reputation is on the line. And so, Dantes doesn't know anything about him. Like, all of a sudden, Villefort is now going to have to turn on him reluctantly to save his own hide. I think is what's going to happen here. At the last moment. Because they'd figured it out.
Why would he have to... Why, though?
I think it's because it's his dad.
He could just burn the letter. Be like, didn't exist. Alright,
well, yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, let's read on.
Right? Because then he's like, well, obviously this guy doesn't know anything, and...
Let's just burn it!
Right?
Yeah.
Okay, everyone is... So did you show this letter to anyone? No one. Okay. Everybody is ignorant that you are the bearer of a letter from the island of Elba and addressed to Monsieur Noirtier. Everybody except the person who gave it to me. And that was too much. Far too much, murmured Villefort. So the captain. Him, the captain, and Villefort.
So maybe it's because of the knowledge that Dantes has. It's not so much the letter, it's the knowledge that there's a connection.
Put him away.
That he's got to put him away.
Okay.
Yeah.
Villefort's brow darkened more and more. His white lips and clenched teeth filled Dantes with apprehension. After reading the letter, Villefort covered his face with his hands. Oh, said Dantes timidly. What is the matter? Villefort made no answer, but raised his head at the expiration of a few seconds, and again perused the letter. And you say that you are ignorant of the contents of this letter? I give you my word of honor, sir, said Dantes. But what is the matter? You are ill. Shall I ring for assistance? Shall I call? No, said Villefort, rising hastily. Stay where you are. It is for me to give orders here, and not you. Monsieur, replied Dantes proudly, it was only to summon assistance for you. I want none. It was a temporary indisposition. Attend to yourself. Answer me. Dantes waited, expecting a question, but in vain.
Answer me this.
Villefort fell back on his chair, passed his hand over his brow, moist with perspiration, and for the third time read the letter. Oh, if he knows the contents of this, murmured he, and that Noirtier is the father of Villefort, I am lost. And he fixed his eyes upon Edmond as if he would have penetrated his thoughts. Oh, it is impossible to doubt it, cried he suddenly. In heaven's name, cried the unhappy young man, if you doubt me, question me, I will answer you. Villefort made a violent effort, and in a tone he strove to render firm. Sir, said he, I am no longer able, as I had hoped, to restore you immediately to liberty. Before doing so, I must consult the trial justice. What my own feeling is you already know. Oh, monsieur, cried Dantes, you have been rather a friend than a judge. Wait, what? I thought it was...
It's like...
Oh, what's my own feeling is you already know. Okay, so he's like...
I think you're good to go,
I think you're good to go, but like, gotta talk to this other dude. Okay. Well, I must detain you some time longer, but I will strive to make it as short as possible. The principal charge against you is this letter, and you see... Villefort approached the fire, cast it in, and waited until it was entirely consumed. You see, I destroy it? — Oh, exclaimed Dantes, you are goodness itself. Listen, continued Villefort. You can now have confidence in me after what I have done. I'm so confused because he's like in his head doing one thing.
Well, I think he thinks that not only is there a risk that Dantes knows that there is a connection between Noirtier and the island of Elba, but also he may have read the contents of the letter. And he can't know if he did or didn't.
Right.
And he can't take that risk.
Debate.
Yeah.
You can now have confidence in me after what I have done. Oh, commandant, I will obey. Listen, this is not a command, but advice I give you. Speak and I will follow your advice. Oh, is he just like GTFO, like get the hell out of here?
Maybe, yeah.
I shall detain you until this evening in the Palais de Justice. Should anyone else interrogate you, say to him what you have said to me, but do not breathe a word of this letter. I promise. It was Villefort who seemed to entreat, and the prisoner who reassured him. Go for it.
You see, continued he, glancing toward the grate, where fragments of burnt paper fluttered in the flames. The letter is destroyed. You and I alone know of its existence. Should you, therefore, be questioned, deny all knowledge of it. Deny it boldly, and you are saved. Be satisfied. I will deny it. It was the only letter you had? It was. Swear it. I swear it. Villefort rang. A police agent entered. Villefort whispered some words in his ear, to which the officer replied by a motion of his head. Follow him, said Villefort to Dantes. Dantes saluted Villefort and retired. Hardly had the door closed when Villefort threw himself half-fainting into a chair. Alas, alas, murmured he. If the procureur himself had been at Marseille, I should have been ruined. This accursed letter would have destroyed all my hopes. Oh, my father, must your past career always interfere with my successes? Suddenly a light passed over his face. A smile played round his set mouth, and his haggard eyes were fixed in thought. This will do, said he, and from this letter, which might have ruined me, I will make my fortune. Now, 'tis the work I have in hand.
What?
And after having assured himself that the prisoner was gone, the deputy procureur hastened to the house of his betrothed.
Oh, snap.
So, what?
So, somehow he's like, this letter, which might have been my ruin, I'm now going to make my fortune. I got a bad feeling. I get a bad feeling that he's going to use it as an opportunity to be like, to distance himself from his dad. Like, I had an opportunity to bury something, and instead I'm going to use it to...
But he destroyed the letter. All the evidence is gone.
Yeah, you're right.
But it's the information, maybe. Like, I have a feeling we're missing a piece, which is the contents of the letter. Like, this whole island thing has been really mysterious. We don't know what happened. We know as much as Dantes knows, which is nothing.
Yeah.
So I think once we know more about the letter, that'll help. But what do we know about Villefort and Noirtier? Noirtier was a Bonapartist.
His dad, yeah.
His dad was a Bonapartist, and like...
I don't think he's still active, or is he?
I think de Villefort was like saying, it's all in the past, don't worry about it. But, I mean, he must still be active if he's receiving letters that are so worrying.
But maybe the contents have nothing to do with Bonapartism. Maybe it's to do with money.
Yeah, where does the money come in? He's going to make his fortune off of this.
Either by trading information
or by
blackmailing somebody.
Blackmailing, trading it, or insuring his marriage. Because he was already going to make a lot of money from that marriage. They opened the chapter with like how much in the money he was going to be because of his sweet, sweet hookup with his wife.
Well, but that's why I think he might use his in-laws to... I don't know. He's going to leverage his in-laws in some way. I don't know. Okay.
Well, we're going to find out next time when we read Chapter 8, which is entitled The Chateau d'If.
D'If.
Chateau d'If. What did you think? What did you think of Chapter 7? Let us know in the comments if you're watching this on YouTube. And next time we're going to be checking out Chapter 8. And, check it out.
Check it out.
Check it out.
We need a slogan.
Hey, check it out.
The joy of reading.
Check it out. Yeah, perfect. Thank you so much for watching us read chapter 7, and we'll see you next time. Take care, everybody.
Take care.